All right, let's dive into one of history's most fascinating and, frankly, controversial texts, the Gospel of John. This account is really unique. It has a very specific structure and a super clear, really ambitious goal. So let's explore how it builds its case step by step.
Right from the get-go, the Gospel of John starts in this incredibly poetic, cosmic way. This first line immediately sets a tone that's just worlds apart from the other Gospels. We don't begin in a little town or a manger. Nope. We start at the very beginning of everything, of time and space itself.
So this first section is all about explaining the text's radical opening claim. You know, the one about the identity of its main character, Jesus, and how this divine being is introduced to the world.
Okay, so the text immediately introduces this huge concept, the Word, or in the original Greek, logos. Now you have to understand, for a Greek-speaking audience, this term carried immense weight. It was like the divine reason, the logic that holds the entire universe together. But the gospel claims this isn't just some philosophical idea. No, this is the very agent of creation. In fact, John chapter 1 says, "All things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made."
The opening chapter then makes this really crucial distinction right away. It introduces a man named John, who we know as John the Baptist, but it's super careful to define his role. The text says, he was not that light, but was sent to bear witness of that light. So think of him like a signpost. He's not the destination. His whole purpose is to point to Jesus.
And here it is. After establishing this cosmic divine word, the narrative makes its main assertion, its biggest claim, that this very principle, this agent of all creation, actually took on a human body and lived a real, physical life among us. This is the central idea that the rest of the entire book is built.
So how in the world does the narrative try to back up a claim that huge? Well, it doesn't just state it and move on. It sets out to prove it through a series of dramatic, very public events, which the text itself specifically calls signs.
You can see how the text structures its case around these public miracles, and each one gets more and more profound. It starts with a display of power over nature at a wedding, pretty amazing. Then it's power over a lifelong physical condition. And finally, it culminates in the ultimate display of power, literally reversing death itself. The stakes just keep getting higher.
And this event, raising Lazarus, becomes the story's major turning point, the point of no return. After Jesus does this, the narrative says that chief priests basically held an emergency meeting asking, what are we going to do? This man is doing way too many signs. If we just let him continue, everyone is going to believe in him. This ultimate act of power is what forces the authorities to finally take action.
Yeah, as you can probably guess, these signs and the teachings that went with them created this inevitable, really dangerous conflict with the religious establishment. But why was the opposition so fierce? I mean, it wasn't just about drawing big crowds. The account gives us several very clear reasons why things got so hostile so fast.
Well, according to the narrative, his actions were seen as a direct challenge to religious law. Healing on the Sabbath, for example, was a huge deal, a major point of conflict. But it went so much deeper than that. It was what he was saying. He started making these bold I am declarations, calling himself the bread of life, the true vine, and he was talking about God in this uniquely personal way that, to them, sounded like he was claiming an authority that just completely bypassed the established religious leaders.
And then you get this statement from the 10th chapter. I mean, this perhaps more than any other line is the moment of direct confrontation. It's an absolutely unambiguous claim of divinity. There's no mistaking what he's saying about himself here.
And the reaction described in the gospel, it is instantaneous. It is violent. For the authorities listening, this was it, the ultimate blasphemy, a crime that they believed was punishable by death. This confrontation right here is what sets the stage for the story's whole climax.
So from this point on, things escalate, and I mean rapidly. It leads to this quick-fire sequence of events. One last meal with his followers, a betrayal by one of his own, and then a trial before the Roman governor.
The story's pacing just goes into overdrive here. The narrative moves from the quiet intimacy of the Last Supper to the chaos of an arrest and trial in what feels like just a matter of hours. It details every single critical event that leads right up to his execution.
And during this trial with the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate, the central conflict gets defined so clearly. See, Pilate is thinking about earthly power, about rebellion, about kings and armies. But Jesus completely reframes the whole conversation. He talks about a different kind of kingdom, one that operates on a completely different plane of existence.
The narrative really emphasizes the finality of this moment. His last words are, "It is finished," and with that, he dies. The account then describes his body being taken down, buried in a sealed tomb, and that, for all intents and purposes, seems to be the definitive end of his life and his ministry.
But the story doesn't end in the tomb. The final section of the text is where it presents its most shocking, its most consequential claim, the ultimate resolution to the whole story.
And the resolution begins not with a presence, but with a shocking absence. One of his followers, Mary Magdalene, shows up at the tomb and finds it empty. This creates this profound mystery that his disciples then scramble to try and understand.
And the story resolves that mystery with a series of appearances. According to the account, Jesus actually shows himself alive to his followers. First to Mary, then to the disciples who are literally hiding in a locked room, terrified. And finally, in a really pointed moment, he appears to the one disciple, Thomas, who had flat out said he would not believe it without physical proof.
And this, right here, brings us to the entire point of the text. The author doesn't leave you guessing about the book's purpose. It ends by explicitly stating its own mission. This was never meant to be just a history or a biography. It's a carefully structured argument written for the express purpose of persuading you, the reader, that its central claim is true. And the real question it leaves us with is, after seeing all the evidence it presents, are we persuaded?